Welcome to this episode of the Aquarist's Edge, a podcast for home aquarists just like you. Learn more about how to keep a thriving aquarium and discover ideas and tips to give your aquarium the edge. And now, over to our host, Arthur Preston.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Aquarist's Edge. I'm Art, and today we're going to pick a fight with one of the biggest myths in keeping guppies, and perhaps in freshwater fish keeping in general. Now, you've seen this scenario before. You get your guppies, you rush home, and suddenly your life becomes this never-ending battle with water tests. You're adding buffer, this and that conditioner, you're trying to do pH down, KH up, you're trying to use crushed coral, peat, oro water, tap water, all in the same week. You're chasing that magical screenshot-worthy set of numbers. And then the guppies, well, they still die. Now, if that sounds familiar, then this episode is going to be for you. And so today we're going to talk about why perfect water parameters can actually kill your guppies, what guppies really need from their water, the difference between a stable tank and a chaos tank, and step-by-step routines that you can copy to keep guppies alive in hard water, soft water, and even slightly imperfect tap water. And by the end of this episode, I want you to feel confident enough to say, I'm not chasing numbers, I'm chasing stability. And here's a quick reminder before we get into this. If you enjoy episodes like this, please follow the podcast and leave a rating or review on the podcast app. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any future episodes. Right, folks, let's get into this issue of chasing numbers and why perfect water is perhaps guppy unfriendly. So where does this idea even come from that you need perfect water parameters? Most of us start in this hobby by Googling, and we put something in like best water conditions or best water parameters for guppies. And we're going to get a list that looks very official. It's going to tell us that the temperature should be between 22 and 28 degrees Celsius, the pH should be about 7 to 8, and that we need hard water with decent minerals, higher GH and KH than your average soft water Tetra tank. Now, that information isn't wrong. Those ranges are reasonable. The problem is what our brains do with that information. We see one number in the middle of the range and decide that my guppies will only be healthy at pH 7.5, 25 degrees Celsius, a GH of 10, KH of 6, and the nitrate exactly 20 milligrams per liter. And then real life happens. Your tap water doesn't match those numbers at all. Maybe you've got very soft water straight out the tap, or you've got liquid rock that's super hard water, or your pH naturally swings a bit between water changes. And your response is that you start fighting your water. And suddenly your guppy care routine begins to look like this. On Monday, you check your pH at 7, but you need 7.5, so you add pH up chemicals. On Wednesday, your pH is now 8. There's a slight panic, so you add pH down. On Friday, your nitrate is too high, so you do a 60% water change. And on Saturday, your guppies are gasping, you add more conditioner, more additives. Oh my gosh, that's not guppy care anymore. That's essentially chemistry cosplay. And here's the key idea for this entire episode. Your guppies don't care about perfect numbers. Your guppies care about numbers that don't move around all the time. Corey McElroy from Aquarium Co-op, that many of you will know from his presence on YouTube and so on, he's known for keeping and breeding livebearers at scale. And he's talked about this a lot. In his experience, stable water parameters outperform perfect parameters for most fish, and you will hear that from many others in the aquarium hobby and trade as well. Guppies are textbook stability over perfection fish, especially the fancy ones. So in this episode, every time you hear me say perfect, I want you to mentally swap it for stable and reasonable. That's our goal. So what do guppies actually need from their water? Let's zoom out a bit and remind ourselves what guppies are. They're live bearers from places such as Trinidad and Venezuela. They live in shallow streams, ditches, and pools. And in the wild, they experience sun-baked, mineral-rich water. They often live in hard, alkaline conditions with lots of dissolved calcium and magnesium. And they're constantly breeding, which means that they need energy and minerals. In the aquarium, most sources and most people who've been in the trade for a long time will tell you that the temperature should be between 22 and 28 degrees Celsius, with most people landing in about the 24 to 26 degree zone as a sweet spot. That's Celsius, of course. The pH, the guppies are usually happy around or above 7, often 7.2 to 8. They do like hard water, and that means a higher GH, That's general hardness, calcium and magnesium, and they need a decent KH, that's carbonate hardness, which stabilizes the pH. Now, nitrogen waste, that is ammonia and nitrate, should be at naught. The nitrate as low as you can reasonably keep it, ideally under 40 milligrams per liter for long-term health. And if you're taking notes, the Guppy wish list should look like this: warm but not boiling, hard and alkaline, mineral rich, low in toxins, and, yes, you got it, stable. Notice what isn't on that list. It doesn't tell you that you must have an exact pH of 7.53 with a 9.5 GH and a 6 KH. There's a big safe zone for guppies. They're adaptable. And that is if you don't keep moving the goalposts on them. So what actually then goes wrong? Why are so many people coming back and saying that they can't keep guppies and guppies are becoming harder to keep? There is some truth in that, and that's a topic for another podcast episode. But people struggle sometimes with guppies. What's actually going on here? The guppies that many of us grew up with, hardy, short fin, feeder guppy type fish, were basically the street dogs of the fish world. Strong genetics, raised in all kinds of water. But modern fancy guppies, especially those that are called show guppies, with big tails and intense colors, are often highly inbred. They are bred in very controlled conditions, they're shipped very long distances, and then they're dropped into our random tap water. They look incredible, insanely colorful, but they can be genetically and physiologically fragile. And that leads to a dangerous combination. The fish themselves are a bit delicate, and we respond by trying to pamper them with perfectly correct water, which often means that we're constantly adjusting. And the result of that is stressed fish in a roller coaster of water chemistry. A guppy in water that's not textbook perfect but never changes will usually do better than a guppy in perfect number water that swings up and down every few days. Now, if your tap water is already somewhere between, say, pH 7 and 8.2, and you've got moderate to hard water, you're probably 3/4 of the way there for guppies. And your job is mostly to stabilize and maintain and not to transform. Let's talk about something that I like to call the chaos tank. Picture this. Your guppies are tiny, colorful, and very lightweight. They don't have big energy reserves. Anything that forces them to constantly adapt costs them immune power. And when we chase perfect parameters, we unintentionally create this chaos tank. And here's some classic chaos tank behaviors. There are big, frequent parameter swings, doing a 60 to 80% water change twice a week to fix your nitrate, changing from tap water one week to RO water the next, bouncing pH up and down with bottled chemicals. Every big swing means that your guppies' bodies have to readjust their internal salt balance, their gill function, and their stress hormones. It could be over-medicating and over-treating, tossing in salt, throwing in general cures, parasite meds, plant fertilizer, pH adjusters, and bacteria in a bottle all at once. Some of these can interact or irritate gills or damage beneficial bacteria that's already in the tank. It may be over-cleaning and over-filtering, stripping the filter completely clean under tap water, replacing all the media at once, scrubbing glass, substrate, and decorations until everything looks like a sterile showroom. You end up with crystal clear but biologically dead water that cannot process ammonia. It also might be micro-adjusting based on every single test. Oh my gosh, nitrate went from 10 to 20. Quick, do an emergency water change. Oh, the KH dropped by 1 degree. Add a ton of buffer. Or the pH moved 0.2. Oh, there's a crisis. Instead of watching the behavior of the fish, you're watching strips and numbers. And here's the irony. Lots of guppies die not because the starting water was bad, but because the fish keeper kept changing it out from underneath them. So how do you know if you're running a chaos tank? Ask yourself, do I use more than 1 or 2 water chemistry products on a regular basis? Do I often change more than 40% of the water at once because the numbers bug me? And have my guppies died right after I made a big so-called improvement? And if you're quietly nodding along, congratulations, you're exactly the person who will get the most value from this next section. And that is building a stable guppy routine that doesn't require you to have a degree in chemistry. Let's build a simple blueprint that you can copy. I'm going to assume up front that you have a cycle tank, that you have filtration appropriate for the size of the tank, and that you're not insanely overstocked. Let's start with step 1. Test your tap, not just your tank. Most people only ever test their aquarium. That's a mistake. What matters to stability is also, what is my tap water actually like? So test your tap water for pH, KH, and GH, and nitrate, and write those numbers down somewhere. Why would you do that? You do it because it tells you what your guppies are going to experience at every single water change. If your tap is already pH of 7.4 to 8.2 and moderately hard for GH and KH, you're basically living in guppy paradise and you don't need to mess around with it much at all. If your tap water is very soft and acidic, don't panic. The key is still pick a strategy and stick to it, instead of changing plans every fortnight. The second thing we do is to choose a simple water change schedule. For most guppy tanks, a good starting schedule is 20 to 30% once a week. That's it. Not 70% today, nothing for 3 weeks, then a panic, and then another 80%. Small, regular water changes. That resets the nitrate gently, it keeps the minerals topped up, and it doesn't shock the fish. Now, if you're heavily stocked or feeding very heavily for breeding perhaps, maybe 30 to 40% per week split into 2 smaller changes. The crucial part is to try to do roughly the same amount at roughly the same time each week. That rhythm becomes part of the tank's stability. Guppies are okay in terms of temperature range, but they don't like temperature swings either. Pick a target and stick close to it. When you do water changes, make sure the new water is close in temperature to the tank. If it's winter and your tap water is very cold, that might mean pre-warming the water or doing smaller, more frequent changes. A guppy going from 25 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius in a big water change may not die that day, but its immune system definitely gets a slap. Now, what about pH? Unless your pH is extreme, like below 6 or up near 9, the guppies usually care more about stability than the exact number. So here's a rule of thumb for guppy tanks. If your pH stays between about 7 and 8.2 and doesn't swing wildly, don't chase it. Avoid regular use of pH up and pH down liquids because they often cause short-term swings that feel like whiplash to the fish. If you need a little pH and KH support, slow-acting buffers such as crushed coral in the filter or substrate or limestone rock in moderation are far gentler. They change things slowly over weeks, not hours. Remember, guppies are hard water life bearers. They use minerals for bone structure, nerve function, and reproduction. If your tap is naturally hard, congratulations, nature's doing the job for you. But if your tap water is soft, instead of dramatically rebuilding your water from scratch every week, pick one remineralization method and stick with it. It could be crushed coral, livebearer mineral salt, or a measured dose of general remineralizing salt. Remember, not table salt. Again, choose one main approach and stay consistent. So you could use this rhythm. When the tank is new for the first 4 to 6 weeks, test 2 to 3 times per week for ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. And once the tank is mature and stable, test once every week or 2, or if the fish look a bit off. You're using testing as a dashboard, not as a panic button. And ask yourself, are my numbers within reasonable range for a guppy tank? Are they similar to last week? If the answer is yes, that's great. Do your usual water change, then go and enjoy your fish. If no, that's where you need to troubleshoot. And you do that slowly and deliberately without shocking the fish in the process. Now here's something of a truth bomb. You can do everything right and your guppies still flame out after a few months. Fancy strains from big commercial farms can have a weak immune system, a history of heavy meds, or very limited genetic diversity, which essentially means they're basically the sports cars of your tank. Incredible performance but low durability. So if you keep losing fancy guppies, look for local hobby breeders who keep guppies in tap water that's similar to yours, because those fish are usually adapted to your conditions and genetics are often fresher. Guppies can commonly carry things like external parasites, internal worms, or bacterial infections. And a strong, stable fish can coexist with small parasite loads. A stressed fish in a chaos tank certainly can't. So instead of reaching for 5 different meds at once, focus on stability first, and then target a treatment if you see clear signs. And always remember, medications also stress fish. Treating in a stable, predictable environment gives them the best chance to bounce back. I wanted to take a minute to talk to those of you with very soft acidic water. And you might be thinking, well, this is all very nice, but my tap water is 6.2 pH, the GH is basically 0, and do I just accept that I just can't keep guppies? Well, not necessarily. You've really got 3 main ways to go ahead with this. The first one is to work with your tap water and to harden it gently. Use your tap water as the base, add crushed coral to your filter or substrate, or use a measured mineral supplement designed for livebearers. And over a few weeks, this will usually raise your GH and KH into a more guppy-friendly zone. It will nudge up the pH, and this is the key, it will do it gradually. And then you can just keep doing the same thing at each water change. The second way is to blend your tap water with harder water. So if you have access to well water from a hard water source, or a friend or family member's hard tap water, you can mix a fixed ratio, say 50-50, into a storage container, treat it with a dechlorinator, and always use that mix. It's a bit more work, but again, the magic is consistency. Same recipe every time. The third path, and this is a more advanced way of doing it, is to use remineralized RO water. And some breeders will do this. They'll go all in. They'll use RO water and build specific hardness and pH using salts. And this can work brilliantly if you're methodical and experienced and have the right equipment. For beginners though, it's easy to forget a component, to mismeasure, or to be inconsistent between water changes. If you go this route, you need to write down your exact recipe and stick to it like a baking formula. Don't improvise every week. Let's talk about something fun. Healthy guppies in stable water are breeding machines. When your water is stable and appropriate, you'll notice females with full boxy bellies and clear gravid spots, regular drops of fry, often every 4 to 6 weeks, stronger colors and tighter fins, and more natural behavior. If that's not what you're seeing, here are a few stability tweaks. Feed for health, not growth. A high quality diet plus stable water is like guppy rocket fuel. Use a good staple, high quality flake, micropellets or granules, and add frozen or live foods like daphnia, baby brine shrimp or mosquito larvae where you can. Keep the portions moderate, and overfeeding is one of the quickest ways to trash your water stability. Use live plants because they soak up nitrate, they buffer minor mistakes that you might make, and they give the fry spots to hide. Once your tank is mature and your maintenance routine is consistent, you can actually test less and observe more. You're looking for clamped fins, hanging at the surface or near the filter outlet, gasping, scratching against objects, or loss of color or appetite. Those behaviors often tell you something is wrong before your test kit does. So let's wrap this up. Today we've looked at why perfect water is often the enemy of healthy guppies. And here's some key ideas to remember. Guppies love hard, mineral-rich warm water, but they have a wide range of safety. They care far more about stability than about hitting one exact pH number. Constantly chasing perfect numbers creates a chaos tank. Big swings in pH, temperature, hardness, and meds that stress fish far more than slightly imperfect but stable water. A solid guppy routine looks like testing your tap water once to understand your starting point, doing small regular water changes about 20 to 30% weekly, a consistent temperature in the mid 20 degrees Celsius, and minimal tinkering with chemicals, and gentle mineral boosting if you're in soft water. Most guppy disasters fall into two big buckets. Number one, crashes of new tanks due to incomplete cycling or poor acclimation and rushing to stock your tank. Or slow fades. That can happen through chronic mineral deficiency, inconsistent maintenance, fragile genetics, and stress. If you take nothing else from this episode, remember this. Pick a reasonable water plan and stick to it. Your guppies will thank you by staying alive and filling the tank with fry. If today's episode has helped you rethink how you treat your water, I'd love to hear from you. Have you lost guppies while chasing numbers? Have you had the opposite experience? Mediocre tap water but rock-solid, long-lived guppy colonies? Send me your stories at admin@artsfishroom.co.za or leave it in the comments or reviews, and perhaps we can feature your story on one of the future episodes. So, folks, thank you for giving your time to listen to this episode. I look forward to sharing with you again next week. And so until then, keep learning, keep discovering, and keep enjoying this amazing hobby. Bye for now.
That's it for this episode of the Aquarius Edge. Please consider subscribing to this podcast so that you don't miss further episodes. We would love it if you would also rate and review the podcast, as this helps make it visible to others. Until next time, keep learning and discovering, and keep finding your Aquarius Edge in this captivating and fascinating hobby.